Strength and momentum is what we add to the show right now, as we're joined by nationally syndicated radio host Kevin McCullough, heard here in New York on AM 970 The Answer, and his Saturday night show, heard all across the country and carried on our same network, Biz TV. Kev, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, JT, I don't think I've been on the show since you've been on the Biz TV network. Welcome to the family. We are excited to have the Liquid Lunchers right here in the middle of each day.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I got to tell you, just by luck during the quarantine here, I guess you had a conversation with Scott Miller from Biz TV, and I guess my name came up in the convo, and you guys were talking about how you both knew me, and he said that conversation with you sparked him to reach out to me and see if I wanted to do something on Biz. So you're actually part of the genesis.
Well, I think he had wind of what you were doing maybe before he spoke to me, but he asked me if I knew you, and I said, well, it depends on how much money someone owed somebody. And, no, I'm kidding. And he said, well, we're thinking about putting Liquid Lunch on. I said, Scott, first of all, it's a no-brainer for the Biz TV network because Liquid Lunch is perfect for the Biz TV audience, which is all entrepreneur. It's all small business. It's all about making America great through the individual efforts of small companies. And I said, there's no one that understands that better than Johnny T. Well, and so here you are just a few weeks later.
Thank you, Kevin. And nobody understands better than you what's happening to our president. He's getting attacked from every angle. The left continues to foment anything they can.
And the right. Don't forget your friends on the right.
No, but the left, I think, is fomenting everything into another, to keep us locked up. They don't want Trump on the campaign trail. And now all of a sudden you got John Bolton, who Frankie, I must say, has been very critical of from day one, said he wasn't a Trump guy, he was a warmonger, we don't need him. But Bolton and the White House still seem to be locked in this battle about releasing this book, and they're putting out excerpts. I think they're all nothing burgers. What do you think?
Well, I think that, Frank, you and I may be the only people in America that don't have a copy of it already. So I don't know what good it's going to do to hold it up any further. But let me just say this. John Bolton's got a lot of trouble. And as someone who was somewhat supportive of him in the Bush years, I kind of share Frank's pessimism. When Trump put him in the cabinet, I was like, or brought him to the administration, this didn't make sense. He did not match the same kind of foreign policy values and kind of just what Trump even says about foreign policy and how to go about dealing with wars. I mean, Frank's had a lot of criticism of John over the years, and he's been accurate. There hasn't been many wars that John hasn't been eager to get into. And that's not Trump's policy. Trump has had a very different non-interventionist approach. So he was always a bad match, and he wasn't there long enough to do much of anything except, I guess, try to dig up some dirt. But, it's getting debunked left and right. The Pompeo accusation that was posted on Drudge today has already been thoroughly debunked. Mr. Lighthizer has just called one of the claims absolute lies.
The things that are in this book, the things that are in this book that Bolton thinks are damaging, I find some of them laughable. And while I've always kind of disagreed with Bolton's approach to foreign policy, I've always found him to be a very intelligent guy. And in my limited dealings with him, I've always found him to be very professional, very courteous, and kind of a nice guy. So I was never critical of him on a personal level. But I think his behavior throughout the whole Trump administration, from his appointment onward, has been very, very, it speaks volumes about his character. First, he tries to subvert President Trump's foreign policy while he was working for Trump rather than implementing it. Second, the first thing he looks to do is write a tell-all book and then not even wait until Trump's out of office, or at least wait until after the presidential election, but release it when he can try and do the most political damage to the guy that gave him a job of a lifetime. And then, if he was so interested in standing on principle, he should have testified when he was asked to by the House Democrats, but he instead chose not to, just to get all these nuggets out there in this book. But one of the nuggets that I found particularly interesting is that Bolton's trying to spin Trump's meeting with President Xi of China as him inviting China to interfere in the election. Meanwhile, if the excerpts are to be believed, he essentially was trying to get China to buy more American agricultural products. Now, how in the world is helping America's farmers inviting interference in the election? I mean, to me, he's not only maybe being dishonest for some of the reasons you cited, but he's grasping at straws for what's a negative story.
Well, just in the one day that they've had these claims out there, there's already been significant question raised over the validity of multiple of the accusations. So I think the credibility is just shot. And if Simon & Schuster thought it was going to be a red hot thing that they were going to make a lot of money off of, I think even just the past 24 hours since they've released these excerpts, you've already done considerable damage to the credit. It'll still sell well. MSNBC will have him on every show for weeks. But I don't think that long term this was a good move for him. And I certainly now think he is very much going to be a stranger to any place in politics, because the left doesn't like him. And who on the Republican side, if Trump really has reshaped the party, and I think he has significantly, who will ever hire this guy again? What does he do for a living from this point forward?
Well, I think he's made enough money with this book, Advance, that he probably doesn't need to worry about working for a while. Kevin, very quickly, I'm curious about your reaction to the Supreme Court's decision on DACA, ruling 5-4 that the Trump administration's attempt to rescind DACA was improper and illegal. What are your thoughts in general on that?
I don't understand the ruling, because if this had been a piece of legislation and their argument was to say it needed to be re-legislated, that would be one thing. DACA was a creation of the executive order, the executive action of another president. I don't understand how an ensuing president doesn't have the ability to undo that. Ultimately, there is a legislative way to deal with this, and I hope that Congress would take something up to deal with it long term. And I think it's also important, Frank, to point out that the court did not rule on the merits of the program itself. It ruled on the process by which Trump was trying to undo it.
Right. The next time you run into your friend George Bush, please thank him for Chief Justice Roberts on our behalf.
Well, yeah. I just, this has been bad.
Bush courts, because you've had
two big cases that Gorsuch should have played a role in, and Roberts has continued to be just a disappointment on almost every level when it comes to the really big tests. And I just don't understand what went so bad with him.
Well, you never know. Maybe they'll take him hunting, and yeah, who knows? You know what I mean? It's amazing how, one justice who's seemingly healthy is gone, and one justice who's allegedly been dead millions of times on Twitter sphere, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, lives on like no one else.
Oh,
So there's something, she's eating something in her cereal every morning, that's for sure.
The reports of her demise have been greatly exaggerated thousands of times, I think, Kev.
I think she actually did pass at some point, and it really is just Kate McKinnon in a black robe now.
It's weekend at Bader Ginsburg's.
Well, don't make me Ginsburg you.
The best thing that happened for her right now is that we went into quarantine because she was working from home already. But hey, look, that's what the Supreme Court's for. Maybe if they only knocked it down because of the process that he used, maybe they got to go back to some lower courts and try to figure it out. And I would love to see legislation, Kev. But honestly, what are the odds the House is going to put forth any kind of, immigration reform that the right's going to like? You're going to have
to win the House to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that's why the election in November is so important. I am glad. Frank and I socialized last night. We were actually speaking about this for a short time. I am glad that Joe Biden is now out of the basement and having to go out and make appearances and say things. Evidently, he gave a speech this morning, I guess, or maybe late yesterday. He got to the end of it, and the people in the room didn't even know he was done. It's going to be a lot of fun to see him on the same stage with the debate as the president.
The applause lines didn't draw the applause. Well, that's
even the conclusion. They didn't know. I mean, he starts folding his folder, and then they applaud. You know, oh, he's done.
Oh boy. Well, the applause never stops for this guy, and I want to thank you very much for joining us, Kev. Kevin McCullough, nationally syndicated radio host, heard here in New York on AM 970. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.